So have you ever, played a weird game or watched a weird show that just really stuck with you? Like, it's a little outside your normal media habits, and not everything in it works for you, but it just sticks around in your mind? I find I'm doing that more and more as I get older, and it's led me to experiencing some really cool media that I would have passed up when I was younger. The game I want to talk about today is what taught me that lesson. Parasite Eve for the PlayStation 1 is a weird, creepy little game that I just can't get enough of. It's got gross body horror, goofy science, and dinosaurs. So let's talk about it. But before we do, I'm Word, and I want to thank you so much for checking out this video. That goes double for any returning viewers. I love you. Mwah. If you like this video, or if you don't, then let me know down below with a comment or a like. So, Parasite Eve. This game is, in a word, weird. But in 2 words, it's weirdly good. It's a JRPG that's best described as sci-fi/horror. Released on the PlayStation 1 in 1998, Parasite Eve came hot off the heels of a little game called Final Fantasy VII, you might have heard of it, aka one of the single most historic JRPG releases ever. Both games were developed and published by Square, now known as Square Enix, and it shows. Parasite Eve incorporates several Square Enix trademarks. Specifically, a real-time combat system, impressive full-motion videos, and a weirdo blonde protagonist. Final Fantasy VII and Parasite Eve also share a more modern setting. FF7 has Midgar's neon lights and grungy slums, while Parasite Eve has a snow-blanketed New York City, right on the cusp of Christmas time. Though it's hardly new ground anymore, seeing a JRPG take place somewhere that I could feasibly go was really cool. Parasite Eve's plot is anything but relatable, though. Parasite Eve's story begins on Christmas Eve, 1997, in front of Carnegie Hall in New York City. Our main character, Aya Brea, is a rookie cop on the NYPD. She's attending an opera with this unnamed man for a nice Christmas Eve date. The performance seems a little stilted, but otherwise, everything is totally normal. Mundane, even. Just a nice evening at the opera. Until people start burning, that is.
I don't like this. This is scary.
This decidedly spooky FMV is the beginning of a real Christmas nightmare for Aya and the rest of New York City, and the opening act of the game for the player. It's a real tone setter. Aya responds the only way a protagonist should. She jumps to her feet, hip checks her date, and pulls a gun. A character established, baby. Gun in hand, Aya engages the weird floating woman on stage. Said floating woman introduces herself as Eve before the game introduces our battle system. And boys, what a battle system it is. Off rip, battle starts, and one thing is super clear. Free movement? And my turn-based RPG? Hell yeah, dude. Aya and her enemies can move freely around the battlefield until they need to attack. Every enemy attack can be avoided with either pre-planning or careful maneuvering, which I think is pretty fantastic. While you're ducking what the monsters are throwing at you, your ATB gauge, shown here, fills up over time. Once it's full, you have 2 options. Option 1, press the X button to attack. This elementary school jungle gym represents your range, and the red circle shows you which enemy you're targeting. As long as your target is within range, you'll hit him. After you do that, you'll see how many bullets you can fire in one go. This number varies with your weapon and weapon upgrades. For example, this gun can fire 2 shots per ATB charge. Your other ATB option is pressing Start to open the menu. From here, you can use an item, change weapons, cast a spell, or run from the fight. You can also hit the circle button to cancel anything and preserve your ATB charges, but the bar only fills once, so you might as well smoke them if you got them. The encounters in Parasite Eve play out like puzzles. All of them have different solutions, even if you're doing the same kind of random battle. Every fight is won by constant repositioning to both deal and avoid damage effectively, as well as evaluating who to use your fairly limited actions on. Like I said, I really like this game. At the end of your combat tutorial, the spooky singer flees deeper into the opera house. Aya pursues and encounters a weird little girl in a hospital gown. Totally normal, not foreboding at all. Even worse is the first enemy you encounter shortly after, this utterly horrific rat.
Oh! Somebody! Oh! He needs some milk!
I'm not going to show you the rest of that cutscene, I think you get the idea. This rat and the FMV that comes with it are tone setters in their own right. Parasite Eve has a fascination with body horror, especially when it comes to animals. A fair few real nasty transformation sequences are shown in FMVs just like this one, and around 90% of the enemies you encounter over your playthrough are some kind of normal animal made nightmarish through mutation. But of course, rats never stop a JRPG protagonist. Icky Rat's ventilated, Aya explores Carnegie Hall's backstage, picking through the corpses of burn victims and battling monstrous animals the whole way. She pursues Eve through the building and into the sewers below, where she folds up a giant magic-wielding sewer gator, but somehow manages to lose track of the giant floating woman.
Oh, I've got a follower now, so bad.
Aya then retreats back to street level and encounters both a wildly nosy reporter and her police partner, Daniel. Aya then leaves the scene with Daniel. They talk over what happened, but don't really get anywhere, and Aya falls asleep. I think? I mean, like, her eyes are still open, so you regain control of Aya the next morning at NYPD station number 17, your home base for the rest of the game. You can use this area to get hints on your next objective, manage your equipment, and most importantly, vibe, baby. Listen to this music, bro. The events at Carnegie kick off a 6-day battle against the game's main antagonist, the titular Parasite Eve. She's a parasite because, as Aya discovered back at the opera, Eve is possessing the body of the now ruined opera's lead actress, Melissa. What? Oh, you want to know how? What? Like how? Well, look, she's... Eve is an evil mitochondria. You remember, like, elementary school science class? The mitochondria, like the powerhouse of the cell? She's one of those, specifically the very first one, hence the Bible referencing name. If that's not ringing any bells, don't worry. It doesn't for me or any of the characters inside the police station for like at least the first 2 hours of the game. Now, if you were to, say, Google the mitochondria and get in touch with that 6th grade science, you would discover that these are not organisms known for their ability to execute long-term plans for world domination through pseudo-magical science. You might wonder, say, how a mitochondria has come to life and taken over the body of a human woman, not to mention remotely causing spontaneous combustion and rapid mutation in people and animals alike. Sit tight, we'll get there. Single-handedly stopping a world-ending threat is a tall order for a rookie cop, especially if it's in New York City. Aya's quest takes her from firing pistols at bats in the sewers to blowing away reanimated dinosaurs in the Museum of Natural History with a rocket launcher, and even more in between.
What is that?
One of the more ubiquitous enemies in Aya's way is, I kid you not, a giant ball of goo that Eve forms from the soupy remains of concert-goers in Central Park. This primordial snot ball makes enough appearances throughout the fairly short game that it almost feels like a pal. I know we've thrown a lot of spaghetti at the wall here, so let's take a sec and make sure it sticks. To review, Aya Brea, a rookie NYPD cop, is singularly capable of stopping Eve, an ancient mitochondrial organism, from taking over and or destroying the known world. Said organism operates entirely via setting people on fire, turning them into silly putty, or morphing the family dog into the walking embodiment of a lifetime of therapy. Kind of a lot to take in, right? Well, there's a good reason. Parasite Eve for the PlayStation 1 is actually the sequel to a Japanese novel of the same name. There's a movie adaptation too, but it's basically the same as the book. I haven't read the book, and I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here, so I'll keep the summary short. Parasite Eve, the novel penned by one Hideaki Senna, describes how mitochondria as we know them are actually tiny pieces of a consciousness called Eve. Since every human being has mitochondria in them, Eve is not only inside of all of us, but can influence our decision-making if she chooses to do so. Eve shows off her funky mind control by manipulating one Japanese woman into essentially becoming the perfect breeding vessel for the quote-unquote ultimate being. This ultimate being is the culmination of Eve's millennia of planning. She wants to create a species that will replace humanity as the Earth's apex predator. Long story short, this doesn't work, and Eve is destroyed. Parasite Eve for the PlayStation 1, though, imagines a sequel in which Eve survives, and, with similar machinations in mind, winds up in a late 90s New York City. The movie/novel isn't required reading, but it does give us some background details on why the game's plot is occurring. This game's wacky story, which I will not be spoiling here, still throws you right into the deep end, but at least now you have a life jacket. Whew, okay, hopefully all that made sense. I think it's obvious why I introduced this game as weird, but now I want to show you why it's weirdly good, too. To start, that battle system is just so good, dude. I talked about it earlier, so I'll keep this short. Dodging enemies while you charge your ATB, then evaluating what to spend that ATB on, mixes a dash of action gameplay with the micromanagement of turn-based battle systems. I love how much thought goes into all your actions, even during random encounters. You're often trying to find that ideal range where you can hit them and they can't hit you. It's a simple problem with a constantly changing solution. This on-the-fly problem solving and the various enemy combinations keep combat interesting even through some of the long, kinda samey dungeons. For example, you have these slimes and giant bug monsters in the hospital area. The slimes wind up real big and fling a projectile at you that's pretty easy to dodge on its own. The bug boys waddle towards you and cover the floor near you with green goop, which is unrelated to the dude soup from earlier if I understand correctly. If either enemy hits you, you're poisoned pretty badly. This combination incentivizes you to play conservatively. You need to evaluate both how to create a safe area from their attacks and which enemy you want to prioritize taking down first. Your ATB gauge also puts a timer on this interaction, as you're encouraged to spend the gauge quickly and decisively to create more attack opportunities. It's really neat. But of course, even the best RPG combat is boring without good presentation. Parasite Eve isn't groundbreaking in this regard, but it's no slouch either. The graphics are good for the time. The creature design is also pretty fun, assuming you think of fun as horrifying nightmare creatures. Anyway, the enemies strike a surprising balance between complete science fiction and a fairly realistic late 90s New York City. Rats, bugs, and bears are some of the more standard enemies, but things start to heat up later with designs like a literal werewolf, horrible boomerang monkey, and a screaming skinless triceratops. This same progression applies to the environment design as well. While you start your adventure in sewers and employee lounges, by the end of the game you're storming historic museums, naval cruisers, and even the Statue of Liberty. Some of the map layouts are a little samey from a gameplay perspective, but the more pedestrian locations are carried by interesting camera work and really cool shot composition. However, the single best part of Parasite Eve's presentation, bar none, is the fantastic original score. Composer Yoko Shimomura came out swinging on every one of these tracks. Each area has its own theme, naturally, and all of them impart a distinctly oppressive and down-tempo mood and atmosphere. The battle theme, police station theme, and Central Park theme have lived in my noggin for literal years. I am begging you to try this game out, if only for the soundtrack. All these component parts make Parasite Eve a real chef's kiss of a video game. I've played through various bits of it at least 5 times over the past 10 or 12 years, and for me, that's really rare. There's just something vaguely comfy about this game, even when it's turning family pets into nightmares. If this review piqued your interest, again, go play this game. Treat yourself, and after you do, come back and let me know in the comments what you thought. While you're down there, let me know what other games make you feel comfy. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed this video. I've been Word, you've been fantastic, and thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. Until next time, my friend.